Hey guys, so I happened to be driving past a dealership the other day that I didn't even know existed. I actually went to the sister branch of this dealership and they only had 2 models in stock and I test drove one of them there. Anyway, stumbled upon this dealership last weekend. They had 6 brand new 2025s on hand. 5 Cummins, 1 Hemi. So I got an in-depth look at everything that I wanted to see. And I even got to test drive a Bighorn model, so we finally get this test drive video. First, I'm going to go over a couple other cool things I think people are pretty curious about. For starters, we got the transmission tag, so that's got some information on it, and I'll pause on that. We're going to break that down for a bit. I wanted to see also if there was a fill port, because I noticed on my Ford 6R80 there's no dipstick up top in the engine bay, but there definitely is a dipstick down on the side of the transmission itself. You just have a big hex plug that you pull out and there's a dipstick on it, so I'll show you that here. I wanted to look at the transfer case because there's no information whatsoever online about what part number or what gear reduction we have with low range on this transfer case, so I'll show you that. I also wanted to check out the headlights and see all the different functions and how the projector style compares to the cheaper reflector style. And then finally at the end of the video we'll get into the test drive and I'll just put that up raw and you can see my comments. It's going to be a little bit noisy from the GoPro, but I did get a nice long test drive. Really thankful to this dealership for letting me come by and check everything out and get a nice long test drive in. Hands down, best dealership I dealt with in Nebraska. Didn't have some high pressure salesman trying to force me into a sale right away. He actually didn't even go on the test drive with me, so perfect opportunity. Super thankful that I was able to just stumble upon this dealership and actually got this video with the test drive out a lot sooner than I thought I would. So first things first, I was looking for the transfer case tag and I stumbled upon the transmission tag. And so the first thing you'll notice is the model number says 8AP1080PN. Well, the advertised part number was ZF8AP1075, which would signify 1,075 foot-pounds of torque. And they advertised that the chassis cabs were going to have the 8AP850. So this is really weird. Why is it called 1080? Does it mean that there's actually 1,080 foot-pounds of torque, or it's rated for 5 more foot-pounds of torque than the engines produce? A lot of questions surrounding the part number. But then we go down to the total ratio, and that tells us what the first and last gears are. So that tells us what first gear is 489 and 8th gear is 0.64. So this is just earth-shattering stuff here, because that means the rumored transmission ratios back from several months ago could be correct. And it tells us for sure that the ratios that are being advertised by Stellantis and on the dealers' websites are false, because they're advertising 4.71 first gear and a 0.67 8th gear. And there's even a video with TFL, and I'm going to put a link in the description with a timestamp, because TFL has a video driving with an engineer from Ram, and he says to him, hey, I'm a numbers guy, I remember numbers, and first gear's like 4.71 to 1, is that correct? And the engineer confirms, and he says, yeah, that's right. Oh my God, like, how does the engineer not know what his own ratios are? Now, the first gear, that thing, that doesn't really bother me. I wish we knew definitively what all 8 ratios are, but supposedly, after our direct 1-to-1 in 6th gear, it actually goes 0.83 and then 0.64. Whereas what's advertised from Stellantis is 0.84 and then 0.67. So it makes just a little bit higher jump from 6th gear into 7th. That's no big deal at all. But then it makes quite a bit bigger jump from 7th into 8th. And it was already kind of a mismatched gear split going from 6th to 7th and 7th to 8th, because you had a small jump and then a big jump. But now it makes it an even bigger jump for that second overdrive, which is going to make it even more challenging to be able to grab that 8th gear when you're towing heavy. So I have mixed emotions about this, but I spent so much time crunching numbers and looking at ratios and comparing final drive ratios with the 342 ring and pinion ratio to other transmissions that are out there that I have experience with that I know work extremely well. I'm just kind of over it at this point. I want to wait until I can actually get some serious windshield time and drive one of these things and hopefully even tow with one of these things to see if this really is the Holy Grail transmission. I still have an extremely strong feeling that the 342 ring and pinion ratio is not what we want for this thing if we're going to be towing heavy. I think, yeah, sure, it's a great ratio for some light duty stuff. I would say it's almost more geared towards like a half-ton setup. If you're going to tow less than maybe 9,000 pounds maximum, sure, then I think maybe this all works out fine and dandy. But it's really like, it seems to me like for the 2025 model, they're gearing things just to get better highway economy, and they really don't care about the people who are towing at max GCW. For heavy towing, I'd absolutely still like to see something in that 373 range. It's a ring and pinion they already make for these axles. It's not like they'd have to tool up to make a new ratio. They already have it, so I really don't understand why they're not offering it. If I had to bet, I would gamble to say maybe they'll offer that option for the 2026 model year. One other thing I want to point out is that this tag was on a 3500 dually, but then I was able to verify on a 2500 single rear wheel, it's also the exact same transmission tag. I thought maybe the dually got a little bit higher bump in power, maybe it got the different gear splits since it has the shorter tires. Well, no, that's not true. The 2500, 3500 single rear wheel, dual rear wheel, doesn't matter. They all have the same ratios. So I noticed a huge difference test driving two different dualies. They both felt the same to each other. But as soon as I hopped in a 3/4 ton where you have over 1.5 inch taller tire, the difference in drivability is very significant, very noticeable. So the dually actually feels like a rocket ship at highway speeds. Both trucks feel like they have lots of torque at the low end, but the dually felt peppy and felt like it had a lot of go on the highway. The 3/4 ton though, with the taller 33.1 or 33.2 inch tires versus the dually's 31.8 inch tires, you could definitely tell the difference in the unwillingness to want to get up and go at highway speeds. And I'm talking 60 to 80 mile an hour. The acceleration with the larger tires was very much noticeable. That's why I thought I actually had different transmission gear ratios or something when I was test driving this 2500, because it was just so much more lethargic and slower to get up to speed. So if you are upgrading your tire size, definitely plan on regearing. But again, if you're wanting the max towability, I would either get the dually with the shorter tires, plan on redoing your tires with a shorter tire, or just wait until the 2026 model year and hopefully we'll get more ring and pinion ratio options. Moving on, so I wanted to see if there's a dipstick anywhere on the transmission, and if you go right to the front side of the transmission tag, you can feel around. There's actually a hex plug in here. Of course, I'm not able to remove that, but there's a bunch of residue on, and just to show you, it's on the passenger side of the truck. We'll climb underneath here. You look up here, you can see there's a bunch of kind of oil residue on there. So this for sure seems like the fill port, but maybe it's also got a dipstick attached to it. And then I also wanted to point out we've got some nice cooling fins on our transmission pan this year, and it looks like we get a drain plug too. So that's a big improvement over the last two 6-speeds. All right, so I'm here looking at the 19 through 24s. That's a 24 versus a 25. And we got another 24 down here. So we'll start with our 24. That's a manual transfer case. There you can see the manual shifter goes straight up into the cab, comes in and goes in the transfer case on the front left side. Here's a 24 with the electronic case. So you can see the fill and drain plug, the electronic shift solenoid on the back. There's the front view. I don't see the manual shift port on this one. And then looking at a 25, on that one you can see where the manual shift port would be. But as far as the rear end goes, looks like the same transfer case to me. This one's got a huge fuel tank in the way. Here's another 25 with, I think, a smaller fuel tank. Nope, another 50 gallon. So, anyway, looks like the same transfer case. Makes me feel like you could probably retrofit a manual transfer case into a 25, because I don't think they changed transfer case. They just made custom transmission and transfer case adapter to use the same transfer case, which makes sense because then they wouldn't have to change drive shafts. So first, here's our turn signals on the projector style. The angel eye turns into a blinker. On the reflectors, it's the whole bottom lamp. And here's just our automatic on the projector style. All 4 lights are on. And here's the low beams, and I turn the fog lights on so that bottom row gets a little bit brighter than just the daytime running lights. And then here's with the brights on, the bottom row gets even brighter and it turns the fogs off. So we just got the 1 light on for our automatic mode on the reflector style. You turn the low beams on, it'll bring that bottom light on, gets a little bit brighter. And then with the high beams on, it actually keeps the low beams on, which is nice. And just to point out, the fog lamps on all models this year are standard. They are all the same LED part number. They got rid of the halogen fog lamps. And in case you're wondering why the fog lamps turn off with the brights, that's actually a law. You can't have fog lamps on with your high beams. Alrighty, hopefully you can see this. So the first test we have, get into my fuel economy. All right, so we are out of tow haul mode. If I press down on the gear selector, yes, you can start in first gear out of tow haul mode. I'm not sure why you would want to, and you will immediately have to upshift into second. So we're in first gear, out of tow haul mode. So if there's, for some reason, you want to be in first, out of tow haul mode, yeah, it's possible. Try to get up to speed and show you the 8th gear, how quickly it comes out. Doesn't like to downshift near as quickly when you're out of tow haul mode and you manually downshift. Okay, we're at 8th at 55 mile an hour. Hope you can see the tachometer. We are probably 1300. We're down to about 1250, and I'm just keeping my foot on it enough so it knows I'm not off the accelerator, so the turbo brake wouldn't turn on if I had it on. Now I'm about a quarter throttle, third, half, I'm going downhill, so it's hard to get it to. Oh, there we upshifted. Okay, now I want to get it down to, see if I can get it down to 1200 RPM. And we're down to about 1200. I'm going to give it about 3/4 throttle. So that's enough to make it downshift. Right here I'm going to do about half throttle. So you kind of got to ease into it. You can't just blip the throttle an eighth out of tow haul mode. But if you kind of roll into it, she'll stay an eighth. She'll lug through it. Now I'm going to turn tow haul mode on. So now we got tow haul mode on. As soon as I touched the brake, I was coasting there, I touched the brake and it downshifted. So we're an eighth, we're at 65 mile an hour, 1500 RPM. My foot's just on the throttle enough so it knows I'm not trying to coast or slow down. And now I'm going to touch the throttle, 8th throttle. But we're going downhill, that might have changed things. Let's wait until we flatten out here. I'm going to try touching the brake again. And yep, instantly downshifts into 7th as soon as you hit the brake. Now it's all the way into 6th gear, that's crazy. Okay, now we're in 8th gear, about 1550, 1600 RPM. I'm gonna do about a quarter throttle. So this truck is behaving, this is just a 2500 single rear wheel, and it's behaving completely differently than the dually that I was test driving. The dually would downshift as soon as you touch the throttle in tow haul mode when you're in 8th gear. This just acts like it wants to lug all day. Finally, at about a third to a half throttle, it finally downshifted. Yeah, this thing's wildly different. I'll just tap the brake and it downshifts 2 gears, so that's pretty awesome. It skips 7th and it goes straight to 6th, 5th, 4th, so that is nice. It actually skips 7th gear when you go to start braking from 8th in tow haul mode. There's 1st, there's 2nd, there's 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, They said this would skip gears when you are shifting, and so far I haven't seen it skip any gears at all when you're upshifting. Only when you're downshifting out of 8th it jumps to 6th. So I'm gonna get out of tow haul mode. I'm gonna slow down, I'm gonna stop. We're gonna try, man, can't get it into 2nd even. So here's 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, turn tow haul mode on. See if I can sense the torque converter locking up. I've got crazy noise. It's about 20-mile-an-hour wind here right now. There's crazy noise coming from, I don't know, it kind of sounds like the dashboard. Very loud. So the torque converter should be unlocked now. We're in 8th gear. Rolling into it. See if it locks up. Nope, I downshifted. So we're driving straight into a headwind, 69, 70 mile an hour. I'm about a quarter throttle input. It's kind of showing about 16 miles a gallon. Now I want to try a couple heavy throttle accelerations. That's floored. Feels like it has quite a bit left to put on the table. Trying not to let this person rear end me. I don't think they're paying attention at all behind me. I would have to say I feel like the Aisin transmission just gave me the feel like I was putting a lot more torque down to the ground. And maybe that was the 410 gears. If you can see the phone location in the charger port, at leaves a little to be desired if you're trying to watch your maps and keep your eyes on the road. So this thing definitely does not feel like a speed demon the way, it's hard to describe. The Aisin with the high output, to me, felt a lot more powerful with the 410s. And that was in a 3500 single rear wheel. So those would have been 33-inch tires.
At the light, turn left onto Chandler Road West.
Man, this truck is dirty. Everything is covered in dust from the railroad right up here. It is crazy. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you learned something. I know I learned a lot. Am I going to call this truck the Holy Grail of Cummins? Well, without towing first, I really can't say it just yet. If I could spec any truck though and order it, I would probably opt for a 2019 to 21 with a tradesman, high output, 410 gears. You can get the rear air suspension, the heated seats, get the factory CP3 recall, and you can delete without having to swap ECUs. Fingers crossed I'll get the opportunity to tow something heavy with one of these trucks in the not too distant future, and then I can really give you my full feedback on this new 8-speed transmission. We'll see you then. Thanks for stopping by.